3343. Definitions are rules for the translation of one language into another. Every correct symbolism must be translatable into every other according to such rules. It is this which all have in common. 3344. What signifies in the symbolism is what is common to all those symbolisms by which it can be replaced according to the rules of logical syntax. 3441. We can, for example, express what is common to all notations for the true functions as follows. It is common to them that they all, for example, can be replaced by notations of P not P and P or key. Erevit is indicated the way in which a special possible notation can give us general information. 3442. The sign of the complex is not arbitrarily resolved in the analysis in such a way that its resolutions will be different in every propositional structure. 3.4. The proposition determines a place in logical space. The existence of this logical place is guaranteed by existence of the constituent parts alone, by the existence of the significant proposition. 3.41. The propositional sign and the logical coordinates, that is, the logical place. 3044.11. The geometrical and the logical place agree in that each is the possibility of an exercise. 3.42. Although a proposition may only determine one place in logical space, the whole logical space must already be given by it. Otherwise, the nil, the logical sum, the logical product, etc. will always introduce new elements in coordination. The logical scaffolding round the picture determines the logical space. The proposition reaches through the whole logical space. 3.5. The applied thought propositional sign in the thought. 4. The thought is the significant proposition. 4001. The totality of propositions is the language. 2002. Man possesses the capacity of constructing languages in which every sense can be expressed, without having an idea how and what each word means, just as one speaks without knowing how the single sounds are produced. Colloquial language is a part of the human organism and is not less complicated than it. From it is humanly impossible to gather immediately the logic of language. Language disguises the thought, so that from the external form of the clothes one cannot infer that the form of the thought they clothe, because the external form of the clothes is constructed with quite another object that to let the form of the body be recognized. The silent adjustments to understand colloquial language are enormously complicated. 4003. Most propositions and questions that have been written about philosophical matters are not false but senseless. We cannot therefore answer questions of this kind at all, but only state their senselessness. Most questions and propositions of the philosophers result from the fact that we do not understand the logic of our languages. They are of the same kind as the questions whether the good is more or less identical than the beautiful. And so it is not to be wondered at that the deepest problems are really no problems. 40031. All philosophy is great critique of language, but not at all in Mautner's sense. Rousseau's merit is to have shown that the apparent logical form of the proposition need not be its real form. 401. The proposition is a picture of reality. The proposition is a model of reality as we think it is. 4011. At the first glance, the proposition, say as it stands printed on paper, does not seem to be a picture of the reality of which it treats, but nor does the musical score appear at first sight to be a picture of a musical piece, nor does our phonetic spelling letters seem to be a picture of our spoken language, and yet this symbolism proved to be pictures, even in the ordinary sense of the word, of what they represent. 4.012. It is obvious that we perceive a proposition of the form RB as a picture. Here the sign is obviously likeness of the signified. 4.013. And if we penetrate to the essence of this pictorial nature, we see that this is not disturbed by apparent irregularities, like the use of and B in the score. Of these irregularities also picture that they are to express only in another way. 4014. The gramophone record, the musical thought, the score, the waves of sound, and all stand to one another in that pictorial internal relation which holds between language and the world. To all of them the logical structure is common. Like the two youths, their two horses, and their lilies in the story, they are all in the certain sense one. 4041. In the fact that there is a general rule by which the musician is able to read the symphony out of the score, and that there is a rule by which one could reconstruct the symphony from the line on a gramophone record, and from this again by means of the first rule construct the score. Herein lies the internal similarity between these things, which at first sight seems to be entirely different. On the rule, it is the law of projection which projects the symphony into the language of the musical score. It is the rule of translation of this language into the language of the gramophone record. 4.015. The possibility of all similes of all the imagery of our language rests on the logic of representation. 4.016. In order to understand the essence of the proposition, consider hieroglyphic writing, which pictures the fact it describes, and from it came the alphabet without the essence of the representation being lost. 4.02. This we see from the fact that we understand the sense of the propositional sign without having had it explained to us. 4.021. The proposition is a picture of reality, for I know the state of affairs represented by it. If I understand the proposition, and I understand the proposition without its sense having been explained to me. 4022. The proposition shows its sense. The propositions show how things stand if it is true, and it says that they do so stand. 4.023. The proposition determines reality, so this extent that one only needs to say yes or no to it to make it agree with reality. It must therefore be completely described by the proposition. A proposition is the description of a fact, as the description of an object described by its external properties, so propositions describe reality by its internal properties. The proposition constructs a world with the help of a logical scaffolding, and therefore one can actually see in the proposition all the logical features possessed by reality if it is true. One can draw conclusions from the false proposition. To understand a proposition means to know what is the case if it is true. One can therefore understand it without knowing whether it is true or not. One understands if one understands its constituent parts. 4.025. The translation of one language into another is not a process of translating each proposition of the one into a proposition of the other, but only the constituent part of propositions are translated. And the dictionary does not only translate substantives but also adverbs and conjunctions, etc., and it treats them all alike. 4.026. The meanings of the simple signs, the words, must be explained to us if we are to understand them. By means of propositions, we explain ourselves. 4.027. It is essential to propositions that they can communicate a new sense to us. 4.03. Proposition must communicate a new sense with all words. The proposition communicates to us a state of affairs, therefore it must be essentially connected with the state of affairs, and the connection is in fact that it is its logical picture. The proposition only asserts something, insofar as it is a picture. 4.031. In the proposition, a state of affairs is, as it were, put together for the sake of experiment. One can say instead of this proposition has such a sense, this proposition represents such a state of affairs. 4.0311. One name stands for one thing and another for another thing, and they are connected together, and so the whole, like a living picture, represents the atomic fact. 4.0312. The possibility of propositions is based upon the principle of the representation of objects by signs. My fundamental thought is that the logical constants do not represent, that the logic of the fact cannot be represented. 4.032. The proposition is a picture of its states of affairs, only insofar as it is logically articulated. Even the proposition ambulo is composite, for its themes gives a different sense with another termination, or its termination with another stem. 4.04. In the proposition, there must be exactly as many things distinguishable as there are in the state of affairs which is represented. They must both possess the same logical, mathematical multiplicity, Hertz mechanisms or dynamics models. 4.041. This mathematical multiplicity naturally cannot in its turn be represented. One cannot get outside in the representation. 4.0411. If we tried, for example, to express that is expressed by x, fx, by putting an index before fx like gen fx, it will not do. We should not know what was generalized. If we try to slow it by an index g like fxg, it will not do. We should not know the scope of the generalization. If we were to try it by introducing a mark in the argument places like gg plus fgg, it will not do. We could not determine the identity of the variables, etc. All these ways of symbolism are inadequate because they have not the necessary mathematical multiplicity. 4.0412. For the same reason, the idealist explanation of the seeing of spatial relations through spatial spectacles does not do because it cannot explain the multiplicity of these relations. 4.05. Reality is compared with the propositions. 4.06. Propositions can be true or false only by being pictures of reality. 4.061. If one does not observe that propositions have a sense independent of the facts, one can easily believe that true and false are true relations between signs and things signified with equal rights. One could then, for example, say that P signifies in the true way what P signifies in the false way, etc. 4.0662. Can we not make ourselves understood by means of false propositions as hitherto with true ones, so long as we know that we are meant to be false? No, for a proposition is true if what we assert by means of it is the case, and if by P we mean P, and what we mean in the case, then P in the new conception is true and not false. 4.0621. That however the signs P and P can say the same thing is important, for it shows that the sign corresponds to nothing in reality. That negation occurs in a proposition is no characteristics of this sense. P equal P. The propositions P and P have opposite sense, but to them corresponds one and the same reality. 4.063. An illustration to explain the concept of truth. A black spot of white paper. The form of the spot can be described by saying of each point of the plane whether it is white or black. To the fact that the point is black corresponds a positive fact. To the fact that the point is white, not black, a negative fact. If I indicate a point of the plane a true value of in Freud's terminology, this corresponds to the assumption proposed for judgment, etc., etc. But to be able to say that a point is black or white, I must first know under what conditions a point is called white or black. In order to be able to say P is true or false, I must have determined under that conditions. I call P true, and thereby I determine the sense of the proposition. The point at which the smile breaks down is this: we cannot indicate a point on the paper without knowing what white and black are. But to a proposition without a sense corresponds nothing at all, for it signifies nothing, true value. Whose property are called false or true. The verb of the proposition is true or is false, as Freud thought, but that which is true must already contain the verb. 4.064. Every proposition must already have a sense. Assertions cannot give it the sense, for what it asserts is the sense itself, and the same holds of denial, etc. 4.0641. One could say the denial is already related to the logical place determined by the proposition that it is denied. The denying proposition determines a logical place other than thus the proposition denied. The denying propositions determines a logical place with the help of the logical place of the proposition denied by saying that it lies outside the later place. That one can deny again the denied proposition shows that what is denied is already a proposition and not merely the preliminary to a proposition. 4.1. A proposition represents the exercise and non-existence of atomic fact. 4.11. The totality of true propositions is the total natural science, or the totality of the natural sciences. 4.111. philosophy is not one of the natural sciences. The word philosophy must mean something which stands above or below, but not besides the natural science.